People really seem to enjoy these things. When we go camping, we get a lot of visitors, a lot of people curious about our setup. The park rangers are always really enthusiastic when we get out there just because they get a kick out of our weird setup.
Hi, I'm Kevin Thomas, W1DED. My guest today, David Stickelman, KF6KAT, has a background with the U.S. Army as a signal officer and also with the Red Cross. Because of the military background and his need for emergency preparedness, ham radio was an obvious connection. I saw some photos on Facebook the other day of his setup for Winter Field Day, and I really just had to talk to him and his wife, Tammy, who also operates with him. And in fact, David has made this a family affair. His wife operates, his son operates, and also I think that he brings out a lot of his fellow soldiers to do occasional APOTA or Winter Field Day operations. David, Tammy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, David, did I get some of that story right? Correct me where I got that wrong.
Oh, yeah. Early 90s, I was Red Cross up until the late 90s. I've been a soldier since 1987, became a signal officer in 2000, and I just recently retired from military service.
So tell me when the intersection with ham radio first happened. I think it was back in the 90s, but what was that first introduction to ham radio?
I've been interested in it pretty much my entire adult life. I just never pursued a license until Tammy and I were working with Red Cross in the early 90s or mid 90s. And one of the volunteers at the chapter we were at recommended that we incorporate ham radio. So the local radio club did a class for us. We took it. I got licensed at the time, and I used it with the Red Cross here and there. We moved to Kansas, and I was here for a couple of years. I picked it back up when I was at a signal school. I became reinterested in it again during the global war on terrorism. We used radio, but there was a large reliance on IP networks, computer networks, to do a lot of the communication, and I felt they were too delicate to do a fight with, like Russia or China, somebody that could impact our communication structure. So I thought high-frequency radio and VHF radio that the Army had in inventory should be more used more often. So not being that familiar with HF radio, I pursued getting licensed as a general, which I did when I was at that signal school in Georgia at Fort Gordon. I got licensed. Tammy got me a 7300, ICOM 7300 for Christmas around 2017. And I started listening to it while I was waiting to get my license, getting familiar with how people operated. Once I got my license, I started using it. That's what got me into amateur radio.
So talk to me about the transition from getting involved with ham radio and then the setup you have now. I know, based upon reading your bio, that you and Tammy like to camp, and I think that's what created this intersection with this military setup that you have now.
So a friend of ours, who's also a signal officer, he knew I was interested in ham radio, and he suggested I do a contest, which I didn't think I would like doing. It was a field day, summer field day. But we set up with our regular camping equipment. We had a bunch of friends and family over, and my friend and I participated in that summer field day. Everybody got involved, everybody enjoyed it, everybody liked the camping and the campfire and just all the activities that go with it. That was, I think, 2019 is when we started doing that. From there, I was inspired by OH8 STN. So I don't know how I ended up watching his videos, but he did the camping and portable amateur radio. So I wanted to do something like that. So I came up with this idea of having a cart where I put all my things on, and I was going to do a bike at first, but that wasn't workable. The cart wasn't workable because the stuff was just too heavy to move very far. So we were looking at side-by-sides or some other vehicle to transport the equipment. And I thought of like a World War II Jeep. So I started looking for those. I looked at one and there's not really enough storage room in there for all the stuff. So I discovered the military M37, which was produced in the 50s. I found one of those. A gentleman was selling it. We picked it up, and that's what kind of started me on the military vehicle route. From there, I wanted to emulate like a military communications setup from the 50s, somewhere in that era.
So when you picked up that vehicle, I mean, the photos look like it's pretty pristine. Did you need to do any work on it to get it in shape to be on the road?
Yeah, we went completely from head to toe. Had the engine rebuilt. Yeah, it's been gone through the electrical system. I mean, it looks pretty, but the outside looked pretty. There's a nice way of putting it. The internals were a mess, but it's pretty much redone. Finishing up a few things now on it.
So I love it. It's not just a ham radio story, then it's also an auto restoration story.
Yeah, it's kind of spread out to other things.
So you've got the M37, you retrofitted also to handle all of the gear. Tell me a little bit about what's in the back of that M37.
So the M37 originally, I just used it to store the box that I used for the batteries and the boxes I have to store the radio gear. Originally, what I would do is just put everything in the back of the M37. The M37 is like a Jeep, but a little bit larger, has a more significant cargo area in it. It's a 3/4 ton truck. So it has pretty good amount of storage space in there. We found an old M1950 Arctic tent that I actually used when I was stationed in Germany, along with the stove that goes with it, a Yukon wood burning stove, so we can do winter stuff. So what I would do is put all that stuff in the back of the truck, and then when I'd get to a location, I'd have to take the batteries out of the box because they're pretty heavy by themselves, move them to the tent individually, move all the equipment to the tent. We would set up inside the tent. You know, I'd put up an antenna. I generally used the DX Commander antenna, and then we'd just operate out of the tent. But that was a lot of effort to move that much equipment from the truck to the tent. It worked. It just was kind of a pain.
You were tired.
Yeah.
Very tired.
Setting up the tent, moving all the radio equipment, setting up the antenna. There was just a lot of stuff to do, and it took probably a couple hours for us to get it all done.
And we don't do, when we go camping, we just don't do just the ham radio. There's other things we do. So by the time we're all done, we're dead tired.
So do you still set up the radio gear in the tent, or do you now leave it in the truck?
Well, actually, we now have another truck we put it in. So we
Okay,
just
I'm missing a
installed
truck then. There's one more. All right. Tell me about that truck.
that truck's the
M35A2.
yeah, and that's where stuff is permanently installed.
So we found a Deuce and a half, which is a 2.5 ton truck. And I actually worked on these when I was in the Army. These trucks were fairly common. It's a truck with a shelter instead of a cargo area. And it's tall enough, the shelter's tall enough to where you can stand up in it. You can move around. You can fit about 4 or 5 people back in there. There's 2 desktops. There's power. You can wire a generator to it or bring in shore power, regular US plug, and power the interior. And the interior has lights and power bars in it.
It's like operating from a room. It's a nice way of putting it, but it's mobile.
So when you go camping, I presume you're both driving your vehicles. One's taking the M37, one's taking the M35, and then you're no?
Well, actually, we take a lot more than just the 2 trucks because we a large group.
But what does a typical outing look like?
When we normally go camping, we've kind of planned it. It's always a long camping trip, but we'll do the ham radios, and and those are installed in the Deuce and a half. And then we take the M37, which has all the camping gear and carries the tents and the stoves because it has a trailer that goes on it as well. And then we also take our horses. So we have another truck that we have to haul the horse trailer with. And then we also have cats we take with us. So, I mean, it's just kind of a
Big logistical chain.
It is a big legit, but it's we've got a large family, so and then we got kids, so you got to haul out the kids' toys and stuff like that, and then fishing gear. So we kind of make it where it's like, instead of going to Disneyland, we create our own Disneyland.
Well, I've got to say, I love the fact that you're not only doing ham radio, but you're intersecting with, your family life. So it's not, I think a lot of us, when we're operating, you close the door and you move into the shack, you operate, and then you go back with your family. And again, it seems like you've integrated both really successfully.
Well, and we have like a lot of friends. It's not just our direct family. I mean, it's his co-workers come out that we all, instead of getting one little nice camping spot, we're pretty much taking up a big chunk of the area, but it's a lot of fun.
So tell me about Winter Field Day. I think that just happened a couple weeks ago, so it's fresh in your mind. What was that outing like? How many vehicles, how many people, how long did it take you to set up?
This was much smaller. Last Winter Field Day, the 2024 Winter Field Day, we had a large group with us. We're blessed to have a number of camping options in our area, and one with a horse campground in it that has facilities for horses in it. But that one's normally closed in the winter, so that's not an option in the wintertime. And the campground that I normally go to was booked for a Boy Scout event, so I wasn't able to use it. So I picked a spot that didn't permit camping, so we just did a very small group.
This time. Usually, this is just like one of the rare times it was very small.
But I wanted to get out there. I don't think I've missed field day since 2020 or something. So I wanted to get out there and do it. We had me and my son, and you came out, and we operated at least, until it got dark. Where the traffic started to dip off, and then we packed up and got out of there, just because that place they don't want you to camp there.
So tell me about the gear that you used at Winter Field Day. Is it still the ICOM 7300 and the DX Commander?
Yeah, so I have an ICOM 7200. The ICOM 7300 I got first, and then as I started getting into Field Day, I picked up a 7200. Because it's marketed as being more rugged, and I think it is. It seems well adapted to it. So when I was using the M37 and I was having to move the radio around, I would use the 7200. But as I installed equipment in the Deuce and a half, it's just there permanently, and I've got it in shock mounts, so it's well insulated from getting bumped around. I put the 7300 in there just because I like the waterfall display that it has. And I have the 7200 in the house now. It's kind of the opposite of what what it normally is. But if I have multiple people operating, I will bring the 7200 as well, so that I have two radios set up. I have the HF radio, the 7300. I have a VHF radio, which is a ICOM 88OH. Or 880H. It's just I like that radio. It's been very rugged, very reliable. And I set up an antenna for VHF, and I have a scanner, Bearcat scanner, one of those trunk tracker types, just listening to what's going on. And then I have a disc cone antenna that we set up. And this Deuce and a half truck with the shelter is very convenient because there's lash points on the body of it, and I can just lash antenna mass to the side of the truck. Then I have SDRs. So my typical routine when I'll go to a place, you can use the POTA app and see who's where. Normally, to challenge myself, what I'll do is I'll go to a place, I'll set up the SDR, look at which bands or have good activity on them, and then I have two ham stick mount points on the truck, and I'll pick the two antennas that I want to operate on. I'll put them up on the mount points and start operating. And usually as an extra challenge, I'll try to find somebody and ask them to spot me, even if I have internet, just to have an extra challenge for myself. Sometimes I'll abbreviate it and I'll just jump on POTA and spot myself, but an ideal setup is where I'll go through all that stuff.
And it sounds like you prefer portable operation. You mentioned that you have a radio back at the house, but you prefer to be out in nature?
I'll do events out of my house, but normally when I'm listening at the house, I'm just listening to what people are doing. I tend to not talk a lot, but when I get out at a campsite, that's really where I enjoy talking for some reason. I don't know why that's that way, but it just how I
it's
shook out.
just nice being outside in the weather. And
So what does the future hold? Are you going to be adding more vehicles to this caravan that you have?
Oh no, the two
I'm
vehicles.
betting yes.
The two vehicles are really a lot of. I mean, it's enjoyable work, but I'm not a mechanic by trade. My trade is information technology systems. That's what I do for my full-time work. So I'm not familiar with maintenance other than just the basic operator stuff. And with these vehicles, I'm really having to dig in because, like, when I was a soldier, I did the operator maintenance, and I kind of just did the bare minimum because that's what soldiers do. But now that I own the thing and it's mine, I really got to worry about is this thing going to break down, because that's going to be an expensive proposition for me.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of maintenance, a lot of things I've had to learn, and I'm probably not inclined to add another vehicle type that I would have to learn. And right now I'm teaching my son how to drive the M37, and he's doing very well with it. Manual transmissions aren't very common these days, but military vehicles, in particular, the old ones, their clutches and driving methodologies are really finicky. So, getting enough operators to move more than two vehicles, I think, would be a challenge. But as it stands, we've got enough space in the M37 to carry our camping equipment, and we got plenty of space for radio stuff in the shelter truck. So I think I'm happy with where we're at. People really seem to enjoy these things. When we go camping, we get a lot of visitors, a lot of people curious about our setup. The park rangers are always really enthusiastic when we get out there, just because they get a kick out of our weird setup that we have.
Yeah, it's a weird setup. It's a combination of military, animal kingdom with, a bunch of kids running around. It's just a big family event.
I can definitely see it attracting a crowd for sure. Do you ever take them to car shows?
Yeah, the last car show we were at, there was a ready contest going on, and I just kind of had that on for background noise to give it the ambiance. And I had so many old, rat rig or radio teletype operators. So I joined in 1987, and we still had rat rigs in the units up until probably the early 90s. So I remember being around them. I never operated them, but I remember being around them. But I had a big handful of people coming in, and hey, I recognize that sound. That inspired us to get we found a teletype machine up north of us, and where was that, Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota.
Yep. So we went and picked it up. We got it restored. I'll put that in the vehicle, and we can use that as a printer. Although I don't think I'll be able to use it on air because it's a 100 word per minute machine. And I think from what I'm reading, the standard on air is usually 60 word a minute.
Well, you guys are doing interesting things, and I really appreciate you joining me today to have this conversation.
Oh, I'm glad to talk to you.
Where can people find you on the air? Are you activating POTA parks relatively frequently?
Spring, summer, fall.
Yeah.
The winters are we don't get as much family and people doing it because it does get cold. And even though the tent's really good with the stove, it's still cold.
But generally, any long weekend is my preferred time to do it. Particularly the 4-day weekends when I can get them, or 3-day weekend, just because I have that extra time to get out there, get set up, enjoy a long session on the air, and then have enough time to get it torn down and get everything cleaned up.
Well, I'll be looking for you, and I'm sure many of our listeners will. Listen for KF6KAT, David and Tammy Stickelman. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.